So I recently got back from Hawaii, and to my surprise, Apple held an unexpected Halloween event, which was not only the shortest Apple event in history at 30 minutes, but it was also shot entirely on an iPhone. And at this event, we got the new MacBook Pros for the second time this year, and finally, a long overdue iMac update. This video is all about the MacBook Pros with 14 things that you should know about. Also, tomorrow we'll be dropping our first 2 new wallpapers packs for November. Here's a quick tease of both packs, shout out if you can guess their names. Can't wait for you guys to see the entire packs, 10 wallpapers each, made by talented designers, both coming out tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time. So number 1, for the first time ever, we get both the regular and the Pro chips at the same time. And that's the M3, the M3 Pro, and the M3 Max. This might seem weird as we only just got the M2 Pro and M2 Max in January, but if you guys remember, the M2 Pro and the M2 Max were rumored to be released in October of 2022. So if anything, those were delayed, whereas the M3 Pro and M3 Maxes were actually released on time. And with these new models, we also get a new color, Space Black, essentially matte black. I was a big fan of the Midnight M2 MacBook Air, as from certain angles, it did look matte black. But this matte black is really the color that I've been waiting for on a MacBook. Also, Apple is using a fingerprint-resistant coating that should reduce fingerprints, and from the hands-on videos that I've seen, it does seem to withstand them better than the M2 Air. However, we only get this space black color on the M3 Pro and the M3 Max versions, and not the M3, which still comes in space gray. With the new M3 models, Apple has finally discontinued the old Touch Bar 13-inch MacBook Pro. So now we have a lineup that looks better and makes more sense. The only previous gen MacBook remaining is the old M1 Air, which I do believe Apple will end up replacing with the M2 once the M3 model is out. And in place of the old 13-inch MacBook Pro, we now get a new M3 14-inch MacBook Pro, which does cost $300 more, but we do get a newer design, a much better display that's larger with Mini LED and ProMotion. We also get more ports, better speakers, and a full row of physical function keys. Plus, we get double the storage at 512 gigabytes. And if you happen to upgrade the Touch Bar 13-inch to the same amount of storage, the difference in price would only be $100. So overall, this is a huge upgrade over the previous model. And it's also got the best battery life of any MacBook at 22 hours. The M3 Pro has 4 hours less at 18. The M3 Max is the same, but from my experience, Max chips are more power hungry. The 16-inch does give you the same 22-hour battery life, even with the M3 Pro and the M3 Max, thanks to its larger battery. However, there are 3 catches that you need to be aware of with this new 14-inch M3 MacBook Pro. 1, it only comes with 8 gigs of RAM, which for $1,600 isn't great. 2, it only comes with 2 Thunderbolt ports rather than 3, and 3, it only comes with 1 fan instead of 2. So thermals might be a bit worse here than on the more expensive models. So how does the M3 chip compare to the M2? As during the event, Apple strangely compared it to the M1. Well, the core counts are exactly the same, both with an 8-core CPU, with 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, and both with a 10-core GPU, and both maxing out at 24 gigs of RAM and 2 terabytes of storage. However, we do get some actual improvements, the biggest one being the switch to TSMC's N3B 3nm process from the old 5nm, something that I've talked about in our previous videos. What this means is that the M3 chip is based on the same process and architecture as the new Apple A17 Pro chip inside the iPhone 15 Pros, rather than the much older A15 chip that the M2 chip was based on. Thanks to this, the M3 can deliver the same performance as the M1, but with half the power. Reason why we get 2 extra hours of battery life on the 14-inch compared to the old 13-inch, despite having a larger display. And just like the A17 Pro, we get hardware-based ray tracing, which can improve rendering times in some 3D rendering apps like Blender or Maya, plus games that support it. We also get dynamic caching that allocates memory to the GPU in real time through hardware rather than software, which should dramatically improve the GPU performance according to Apple. Yeah, we'll definitely be putting this to a test. We also get a new AV1 decode engine, so if you work with AV1 formats, you should see faster rendering times. If we look at some actual performance numbers, both the CPU and the GPU cores in the M3 chip are about 20% faster than the M2s. But yeah, overall, the improvements of the M3 over the M2 are fairly minor, it's mostly all the other features like the dynamic caching, 3nm, ray tracing, and AV1, which are the bigger upgrade. And if you're planning on getting a new MacBook Pro, you should pair it with a premium set of earbuds. Marshall's Motive 2 ANC is a stylish and premium alternative to other high-end ANC earphones that offer Marshall's signature sounds powered by their custom 6mm drivers. The case comes in a faux leather shell, and the earbuds have a rugged design featuring textured metal stems, with brass end pieces that look like no other earphones that I've seen on the market. You can get 6 hours of playtime on a single charge and up to 30 hours with the case, which has the added bonus of wireless charging. The Motive 2 ANCs offers a great combination of iconic audio and sound isolation that delivers an awesome listening experience with solid transparency modes available too. You can also customize your EQ with Marshall's very own app. Check out Marshall's Motive 2 ANCs for just £179 by using the link below. And now, back to the video. If we take a look at the M3 Pro, this is where things get weird. The CPU is still a 12-core, but now it has 6 performance and 6 efficiency cores as opposed to 8 and 4, like before. And weirdly enough, Apple gave us no performance numbers at all, which makes me think that the CPU performance is either the same or even worse than with the M2 Pro. The GPU also used to be a 19-core and now it's 18. However, Apple does claim a 10% faster performance here. And the memory bandwidth also gets downgraded from 200 GB per second to 150, as well as the maximum storage, which is now 4 TB, down from 8. So yeah, the M3 Pro seems like a downgrade over the M2 Pro. We will be testing this out for sure. On the bright side, the M3 Pro does also come with all the other features that the M3 chip comes with. Plus, it also gets more RAM than the M2 Pro, up to 36 gigs compared to 32. But the M3 Max is really where the big upgrades are, which, for the first time, is an entirely new chip rather than an upgraded M3 Pro. The CPU is now a 16-core chip from 12, with 12 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores as opposed to 8 and 4, for what Apple claims to be a whopping 50% faster CPU performance. The GPU also gets an upgrade with 40 cores, up from 38 for 20% better GPU performance, and we also get more RAM, up to 128 GB as opposed to 96, and the storage can go up to 8 TB, which is double of what the M3 Pro chip can do. So overall, M3 chip, small upgrade, M3 Pro, apparently a downgrade, and M3 Max, big upgrade. Now, if you're planning on getting a bin model, things are a bit weird this year, especially when it comes to the M3 Pro 14-inch. You see, the bin's M3 Pro comes with an 11-core CPU and a 14-core GPU, whereas before, we got a 10-core CPU with 6 performance cores as opposed to the 5 that we have now, and a 16-core GPU. So I do believe that the base M2 Pro was actually more powerful than the base M3 Pro. And if you do plan on upgrading anything on the base model especially, you do have to be very careful, as at the moment, if you bump the RAM to 16 GB, you'll only be $200 away from the M3 Pro model, which gives you an extra port, much better CPU and GPU performance, and 2 extra gigabytes of RAM. So the sweet spot in terms of the best performance and features is that 14-inch M3 Pro model. And if you do want to connect an external display, the M3 model can still only do just one, which does kill my hopes of using a future M3 MacBook Air for work, as I do use dual monitors here. The M3 Pro supports up to 2 external displays, whereas the M3 Max supports up to 4. The good news is that all models now support 600 nits of brightness, up from 500, so if you use a studio display, the brightness of your MacBook would now match it perfectly. And based on Apple's internal image of the M3 model, it seems like we now get 2 256GB NAND chips, whereas before we only got 1. Meaning that we shouldn't get those slow storage speeds anymore that plagued the baseline M2 models. And like I say every year, always buy refurbished. You can now get an M2 Pro 14-inch for $1,600. That's the same price as the new M3. And with that, you get double the RAM at 16 GB, 1 extra port, dual monitor support, 2 extra CPU cores, and 6 extra GPU cores. So you're only really sacrificing on the battery life, 22 hours versus 18, but other than that, the M2 Pro is a much more superior device. But let me know, what do you guys think? I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.